Welcome to video 12 of the Search for a Better Health series. In this video, we're going to be looking at the idea of epidemiology. So we're going to look at what it is, what kind of studies we can take from it, and then we're going to look at a quick link between smoking and lung cancer. So epidemiology is the study of diseases in population, and it's used to study both infectious and non-infectious diseases. It's the way that we identify patterns in how diseases occur. We can identify the possible causes of disease, and then we're able to determine strategies that would be most best in controlling diseases in the population. So we usually use these to improve public health and almost like an evaluation to see if the strategies we have in place currently work and what developers we might need to put in to control the disease further. So when we talk about epidemiological studies, we talk about three different types and processes which we can undertake. So the first one is descriptive, and these provide information about the patterns of the disease, including things like the frequency, which section of the population is affected. So we can look specifically at age, gender, socioeconomic status, and so on. We can look at geographical location and whether there was a particular time period in which individuals were affected. Then next we have analytical, and that's where there is more data collected and it's further analysed to develop some hypotheses as to what might be the likely cause or causes of the disease. Though morbidity and mortality are two indicators that can be used in these studies, and then it can provide the data can provide information about the incidence and prevalence about these diseases. So just in those two sentences, we have four keywords which we've been discussing. So there's morbidity, so the number of cases, and then mortality, the percentage of the population that dies from the disease. So when we are looking at the indicators in the data, we're looking at, well, how many of people were there affected, and then how many people were actually deceased from that. And then we're looking at incidence, so any number of new cases in a period, and then prevalence is the number of people affected at any one time. When we do look at analytical, we can have almost two focus groups, I guess, and they can be made up two different ways. So the first are case control studies. So we're comparing people with the disease to people without the disease. So people with the disease we refer to as the case. People without the disease we're referring to as the control. And then we're looking at and analysing their information to see were there any differences in what they were exposed to and their lifestyles to maybe see what was a possible cause of that disease. And then the other, which we can do, we can look at cohort studies. And this can involve studying two or more similar groups of people who don't actually have the disease. And these groups differ in their exposure to the potential cause of the disease. And then this group is followed over a long period of time to compare the incidence of the disease. So when they take part in the study, they have either been exposed or not been exposed to that the idea of what causes that disease, but they don't actually currently have it. So by studying them for a long period of time, they might actually develop that disease, and then scientists look to see whether they can actually form some links in between that source of exposure and the incidence of their disease. And then the last are intervention, and this is where we're looking at testing the effectiveness of a treatment which was created, or the effectiveness of a campaign or a strategy that was used to decrease the incidence. And so we're looking at a public health campaign to change behaviour. If we're looking at smoking, we can look at things like the different advertisements, the introduction of non-smoking areas, the sharing of information that passive smoking is dangerous, all those kind of things. And then we can see whether the amount of people smoking has decreased, and therefore does that lead to any changes in their behaviour. So when we conduct epidemiological studies, there are 10 kind of key factors that make up the study. So the first is that they're usually conducted over a long period of time. The they study very large sample sizes, so there are many people in these studies, and they're collecting a wide variety of relevant data from the people who are affected and unaffected people. So that's in those case control studies. So if they want to study, one aspect of their life, they don't just collect that data. They're making sure that they collect a large range of data to analyze at any point in time. Participants that are in this study represent a broad range of society and lifestyles, and they usually use control groups who are not exposed to the potential cause, but might be similar in all other respects to the test group. Data is collected on the incidence, prevalence, mortality, and morbidity rates of the disease being studied. They statistically analyze data to identify patterns and trends in the occurrence of the disease. They identify the possible cause of the disease and the risk factors. From these, we can develop a management plan with strategies to control or eliminate the disease and educate the public. And then they can also evaluate the effectiveness of control and treatment programs. So when we're looking at the second dot point in this video, we're looking at whether there is in fact a relationship between smoking and lung cancer. And that relationship which we're trying to draw is called a cause and effect relationship. So when we're looking at a cause and effect relationship in an epidemiological sense, we're looking at which, if there was an action taken, this then can influence something else to occur. And for this to be correct, it must meet the following criteria. So there must be a high risk that the disease develops when a person is exposed to the possible cause. There must also be consistency in the results found by researchers in each study carried out. It must be shown that higher levels of the cause lead to a greater risk of developing the disease, and there must be a particular time relationship with the cause occurring before the disease. So over time, there's been lots of studies between smoking and lung cancer. Actual pictures, graphs, data is not located in this video. They will be located in the resources we're going to be using in class this week. So what some of the studies have shown is that smokers have a 10 times greater chance than non-smokers of dying from lung cancer. The more cigarettes smoked each day, the greater the incidence of lung cancer, and the longer a person smokes, the greater the chance of developing lung cancer. So these are some of the cause-effect relationships that they have already shown from the data they've collected and analysed. So more recently, and here's one graph of what happens to a person over time, depending on their level and the amount that they've smoked. So more recently, they've developed or they've shown that there's a greater risk from passive smoking between a person, being fortunate enough to be diagnosed with lung cancer. More recently in society, there's been an increase in smoking because it might have been more socially acceptable. And more recently, we're also seeing an increase in the number of females smoking. And these three have been shown in society from a lot of these studies as well. So that concludes video 12. Make sure you tune in for video 13.